Shalom Israel. First and foremost, I do want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Kadash, that belongs to the apostles, and that was a great millstone for teaching us as true peace and blessings, which is hopefully of Israel. Yahweh is the name of nothing further than Hebrew. Ba'ashem means the name, and Yahweh Shai is the name of the only God's Son. Back on the lesson, and as you see within the title, this devil wants total control, especially very soon with the introduction of the MOTB, the Charagma, to where they'll know everything about you, what time you woke up, what you ate, what time you went to sleep, your medical history, things you said, things that you are thinking. This devil wants total control, his grasp over you. And it's especially going to be once again heavily pushed via that Charagma. You already see the various things this devil is doing now, which is what I'm gonna get throughout these videos, which they're gonna bring up the things that this devil is dealing with the technology, these cameras. I forget exactly what they call them, but they're setting up these particular cameras around to catch Jake doing these ICE agents to sneak up on Jake to see where they're at, which they're saying that these cameras are set up for a whole entirely different reason, yet they're being used to do just that, to capture Jake and send them away. But you're gonna see throughout these two videos that I got, they're gonna bring up points of what's everything this devil is doing, especially dealing with this particular video game, dealing with Watch Dogs, which is gonna bring up a few points there. So I'll further expound these points after I get these videos. Don't want to stall the intro.
Police vans in Texas are now going to be able to hack into your phone as you drive by, even if you're not a suspect, because they just spent $4.5 million on new Chevy Tahoes that are integrated with phone tracking surveillance tech made by an Israeli-based company, Cognite. This tech simulates a mobile phone tower that forces nearby phones to connect to it and enables cops to keep tabs on any phone in the vicinity. This is only happening in Texas right now, but I have a feeling that it's going to be coming to all of the other states too, and probably even the rest of the world. Because when you look at the UN's Agenda 2030 that they literally have on their website, this is the United Nations, they say there's going to be no crime at all by 2030. There's going to be universal everything by 2030. There's going to be no poverty. There's going to be no hunger. There's going to be all of these crazy, unrealistic things.
So you see, this is this devil's plan, total control. But you also get within the scriptures, why do the heathen rage? Why do they imagine a vain thing? This is a vain thing. This devil didn't be able to fulfill his plans to its whole entirety. Hey, the Lord's only going to let the devil do his plans to a certain extent. He's going to cut you right off. You're going to script how the Lord's going to strike him down while he's filling his belly. Just when you least expect it. Because you also get within the scriptures how his inward thoughts are his houses shall continue forever. Still thinks he's going to be able to be in power and rule forever. That's why he's building these bunkers, these underwater bases and submarines and all these various things in order to try to escape his coming judgment. And think he'll be able to wait it out, then come back and then rebuild. But you get within the scriptures where it says they shall build, but I shall throw down. So there's no outwitting or outsmarting Yahweh Ba'ashem Al Shai. But as you see, listed these points. Play it back real quick.
No poverty. There's going to be no crime at all by 2030. There's going to be universal everything by 2030. There's going to be no poverty. There's going to be no hunger. There's going to be all of these crazy, unrealistic things by.
So a total control once again. It's all ultimately going to be ran through this Charagma, this MOTB. You already see the conditioning, and how they are preparing the people, for this beast system. As they, just brought up that technology where now these, policemen dealing with this.
Police vans in Texas are now going to be able to hack into your phone as you drive by.
So they're able to hack into your phone. You can imagine what this devil uses this for. To especially target the prophets. You're driving by and they're able to pick up on your phone, see who exactly is who's driving by. And we're speaking of Esau Edom here. And they're going to be, pushing this in the name of so-called safety. Security. This is for your benefit, for your well-being. But it's why you get in the scriptures how this devil's not to be trusted in any case. He is a natural-born liar.
You kind of wonder how the heck are they going to make these possible? And it's are they going to make these possible? There's going to be all of these crazy, unrealistic things by 2030. You kind of wonder how the heck are they going to make these possible? And
hey, and how it's going to be possible is going to be via this Charagma, his MOTB. I made that point in the lesson because I just was watching a little bit of this video before I was going to hit the button to go record. I thought came to mind that I'd be using this Charagma, this MOTB, to want to control you, to see what you're doing, what's your thought process, especially dealing with that Neuralink and the MOTB. It's going to go hand in hand. That mark in the forehead and the mark in the right hand. When I say right hand, it can be any hand. You get that in Revelation 14. So you have people that try to use that to say, well, what if I take it in my left hand? Then I'll be good. Well, no, either hand you take it and you will be destroyed. And just, your right hand being, your dominant one. But, as I was making that point, you see the things this devil is doing now via this technology. I see right there, they're able to, pick up, and pretty much, hack your phone, as you drive by. So you obviously are able to, see, who's in the vehicle, how many, occupants, So now imagine when this MOTB, this Charagma, this RFID C-HIP, which is what the MOTB is introduced. Imagine the various things the devil can do with that, and people are going to see the so-called benefits in that. I'm able to listen to music within my brain. I'm able to see holograms in front of me. I don't need to carry my phone, wallet, credit cards, cash anymore. People are going to be seeing the so-called cool and there's another word I was looking for. But the so-called cool things, the so-called good aspects of it. Not knowing this devil's gonna be able to, know your every move. Things you're saying out loud, as I make that point, things that you're thinking. Because they have this technology where, which they're already introducing this Neuralink already, where people are already taking it and they're able to, move, computer mouses, with their brain waves. Pretty much having hacks, on video games. And you already see the vast and various experiments this devil did on these poor animals that you saw in the past. They're dealing with Elon Musk. They're doing these trials, these experiments on these monkeys. And an article came out where you had various of those monkeys were pretty much killed during those experiments. And you had damage control dealing with that. Articles were taken down and all that. So this is what they're wanting to put within your body. Just how you have people will, C-HIP their dogs, their cats. People will brand their cows, their cattle. Why do they do that? To go show they have ownership over it. And this is what they're wanting to put within you. To go show they have ownership over you. That you are making him, Esau Edom, your God. Because that's what you're doing. You taking this Charagma, this MOTB, goes to say you are in agreement with this beast system. But dealing with that point, as I get throughout these videos, is ultimately what all this is leading up to, the conditioning that you are seeing. So you're seeing it via these different cameras that they're implementing to be able to, detect, people's, scanning their faces and running it through, a process, program, whatever the case may be. As you just play right here dealing with this truck, where they're able to, pretty much hack your phone. So you see that over there in Texas. As you says, it's in Texas right now. You also may see it trickle down to other states. So now imagine when this MOTBS Karagma is introduced, because you already see they want total control. So I'll play the rest of this.
It's by controlling and regulating and monitoring every single thing that we do.
And it will only get worse when this Karagma, this MOTB, is introduced once again. And it's like if I sound like a record, but you're going back to that point as I was making the beginning lesson. As you just brought up, a little bit ago also. But you're able to, know what you ate, what time you woke up, your exact location. Matter of fact, they can put it to where you can't go past a certain perimeter. This is why they're especially, pushing out these, electric vehicles. They can put a limiter on it to, how far you can go. Know where you're going. But now imagine when you have a literal live tracking GPS within you. Is devil able to, shut you off? Turn you to a zombie. Especially dealing with these 6G waves and, there's no telling. This concoction that people, took and, may also take again, especially once, this other big event that they have been alluding to. Similar to what took place back in 2020, but much worse. So this is going to be the so-called solution that they're going to implement, especially dealing with this economy that's collapsing as we speak. Dollar continues losing its value. Nations leaving the dollar behind. People are going to look for something bigger, something better. And that's going to be this new flashy toy, which is going to be that Karagma, that MOTB.
That's why all of these flock cameras are being built to regulate everything. And
that's what that is. Break down the flock cameras that they're, putting it. Which is a video that showed these flock cameras. I don't know if it was a Buzz video or if I came across on TikTok, but someone made a video where it was showing all these locations of these flock cameras, and it was all locations where Jake pretty much would be at. Because right now they're targeting, Issachar, really the tribes as a whole, which we said through spirit power of Yahweh, all the tribes will be targeted. Because you saw it started with the Northern Kingdom, dealing with Issachar, Gad, which are so-called Mexicans, Native Americans, and now you also see it affecting the Southern Kingdom, which are the so-called African Americans, Haitians, and you saw that a while back how they were also getting caught. But dealing with these flock cameras, they were pretty much put at I forget exactly where it was. Pretty much where Jake tries to look for work. Dealing with these kind of like an Atwoods, Evan Atwoods, over here. But there's another similar organization. I forget the exact name of the company. But still at that point, they put these flock cameras where Jake would ultimately be organized at or grouped at, in targeted locations.
See everything and collect all of our data, and why they are integrating government surveillance and kill switches into our cars starting in 2027.
Well, soon those kill switches will be in you. So that's spread. I didn't get past this point.
And now there are these meta glasses that record everything that people see, so that you don't think that Meta is going to be seeing all of the data recorded.
And it's also dealing with the Ring. There's also information that came out where you had ICE using Ring to
by
their
the
benefit
meta glasses.
to capture Jake.
Come on. They have never kept our privacy.
Police.
So there you go. Just dealing with that main point of the lesson. This devil wants total control, and you already see the various steps this devil is taking already, which we just played dealing with this one video right here. But I also got the other
6.4 billion connected devices now serve.
And I believe this game is excuse me, dealing with Watch Dogs, which is kind of like a hacking organization, type of game. It's also pretty much a group that pretty much went against the government, if I'm correct, and released information, and kind of like Anonymous, if you remember that group a while back, in real life. Seeing what they did.
6.4 billion connected devices now serve as collection points, mapping and recording our daily routines, making a more secure and more invasive system.
And also bring up another point, dealing with the Pokemon Go. That was a big game, an app, going a few years back, where people would be using that, walking around everywhere. And it came out that they used people's data to create a map, the most detailed map possible, where people's going to all these locations, mapping spots that they really couldn't, with these cars, because you have Google Maps and all that stuff. They'll drive cars around, mapping and all that stuff, and they used people to do that. People thought, oh, this is a cool game. It's just a game, guys. We're not going to use our information and our data. And exactly what
Who else is listening? Big Brother no longer works alone. Thousands of little brothers monitor and aggregate your every move, building a complete digital profile of you to be bought, sold, or stolen in an instant. Toys study your children, reporting their play habits back to marketers. Appliances, consoles, and home security systems give corporations a window into your private life. Control of your vehicle and mobile device can now be breached remotely by anyone at any time. You may think that you are immune or underestimate the risk, but your digital shadow is already compromised. Insurance companies use algorithms to monitor your life habits and limit or deny.
And it's also why you see, you'll be talking about something, a specific drink, certain food, or, a person, and you go on YouTube or you'll just be scrolling around, and that exact thing that you were talking about pops up. That's not
Coverage. Health providers determine if your cancer is worth treating. Search results and news feeds are skewed to bias mood and influence your vote, engineering social uprisings on a massive scale.
And there's also that too. I seen a post where I've even dealt with the World Cup. They have ads, showing, and it's different in every region. So it'd have a different ad. Pretty much catered towards whoever they're showing it to. And I believe there was another post or something I seen. I forgot exactly what it was. I think it was Bernie Sanders talking to ChatGPT, if I'm correct. And they're pretty much going to how AI could be used politically, or something to that effect. How they could use people's information and whatever. But still at that point I was bringing up, they could use these particular ads to direct towards the person's what they align with, what they think. So it could be a whole AI generated thing, catered towards this person and what they think, and they'll go and want to vote for that person since they are pretty much with what they think. I could have worded that a little better. Just I'm roughly recalling what I remembered. That was I think maybe going last year. Which I believe I made a lesson, speaking, on just that point that came, back to mind. See what his comment had to say, and it's likely to turn out to be a longer type of lesson. Just a lot of points are coming to mind. Let's see. And somehow we all know this information, and we're just okay with it. Like, obviously we're not okay with it, but people are too comfortable to even do anything about it. So we just have to accept it, and therefore they've won. And you also see people are actually, going to these flock cameras, taking them down, cutting them down, covering the camera. let's see. That's pretty much the point. People are gonna see it's just a video game, guys. It's still a video game. That's not real. They put it in front of your face. But as I get into these scriptures, is Isaiah 10:1, and it says, "Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that right grievous in which they have prescribed." So, as those two videos we played, how you go into these draconian-like laws? Is that word draconian goes to harsh, strict, severe. So this devil, tighten that grip, applying that pressure. So don't be surprised to see, checkpoints, begin to be held, cameras being set up everywhere as you see them with these flock cameras, which are now, a big thing. You already went to, various points how they're using these, cameras. And matter of fact, I believe they're being sued because, people are, calling them out for, what they're really, being used for. But like I said, the main point is, listen, this devil wants total control, as you saw with those two videos that I got, the various points that were brought up. How they're using technology to monitor everyone, your exact move, things that you're saying, maybe use in various ways, Alexa, smart TVs, or some of these, electronic vehicles like Tesla. Dealing with that, those trucks that they now have over there in Texas, we're able to, pick up on, and hack it, a person's phone pretty much instantly, as she said. See the person's information, and whatever the case may be. So that's with that. Now imagine with this, Karagma, with this MOTB, this RFID hit being introduced. This is what they're ultimately preparing you for, Because once that's in play, they'll have everything they need about you. It's all going to be within that Karagma. You no longer have your credit cards, your cash on you, all your medical records, bank information, medical history, and everything you've done. It's all going to be within that Karagma. What's in your exact location, and pick up on the way you feel, and you get the idea. Some Black Mirror type stuff. But it's also them using truth in plain sight. There's a 2 Corinthians 11, and it says, "Lest Satan should gain advantage if we were not ignorant of Satan's devices." So we ultimately see what this is leading up to. The things this devil is doing is you also getting right here. Another translation, it says, "So that Satan will not outsmart us, for we are familiar with his evil scheme." So we know how this devil operates. And then they put it in front of your face as we just play within that second clip. And that was in a video game. But that's real stuff. Monitoring people and using toys with cameras in it, people's TVs, and all that stuff. But as I'm making a point, we especially see what this is ultimately leading up towards. The introduction of this Karagma, Revelation 13:16-17, it says, "And he called those small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads." That word mark in the Greek goes into the word Karagma, which then goes to the word etch, scratch, shows a physical mark. But you have a lot of these others, like camps, are pushing that the MOTB, the Karagma, is spiritual. IUIC, ISBK, and various other, Israelite camps. That are pushing that spiritual. It's Caesar Borgia, it's sin itself. And they're especially always beating around the bush, not really giving a say exactly as to what the MOTB in Revelation 13:16 is speaking of. Especially when it goes into that buying and selling, they can't, make it make sense. And really, a lot of them, took the bag. Had to have, sold out. Or as El Paso I mentioned, I just briefly watched his lesson, or Bishop Nate's too proud to admit his wrongs. doesn't want to admit that, he's mistaken, and that the apostles and Alexander Donald the Great Millstone are correct. But other than that, no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name beast or the number of his name. So very soon you won't be able to buy nor sell without it. Matter of fact, you won't be able to live a so-called noble life without it. This is how they're gonna force the people's hands in order to make a choice. Either your own family against you, your job will be on the line. Once again, everything will be locked behind a paywall. And to access and bypass that paywall, you're gonna need to have that charagma. And also mention that it says that we're in their foreheads, seeing the Neuralink, that mark on the forehead. Other companies, create similar things. But Isaiah 10:1, or not Isaiah 10:1, Isaiah 26:10, it says, "Let favor be showed to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness." And people, want to trust and believe in this devil in Esau, Edom, that this is for the people's well-being. So he's doing this to help us and to protect us and all these various things. This devil cannot care any less about you. Matter of fact, he wants to take you out. He wants to depop this place. But dealing with this right here, he's able to, now keep tabs on you at all times. To see whether if you want to rebel against him or not. He also had this one thing a while back, which I remember the other Matsuzak made a lesson speaking on. And I want to say that made a lesson also speaking on it a while back. But dealing with these, particular, colored stickers that they'll put on people's mailboxes to pretty much go to show if they are, with everything this devil's doing, or those who are against it. It was red, yellow, or black stickers. I forget exactly what every one meant. There's also some that mean they're in between, they don't really care, they're neutral, and all that type of stuff. But now with the Downward TV, they'll be able to, know your exact thoughts, things you're doing, Because matter of fact, they had this technology over there in China. I made a lesson to speak on it a while back, where they had this particular, kind of like a headset. They'll put on these children to, see if they're paying attention or not, and that would be, sent directly, to the parents' phones, the brain waves, and see if they're paying attention in class or not. So they're most definitely able to, do that to go show, what the person is, thinking and the way they feel, But let's see, in lamp of brightness will he deal unjustly and will not behold the majesty of the Lord. So just dealing with that point, he can't do any good. And we're speaking of Esau, even here, the devil the Bible speaks of. The wicked the Bible speaks of. How wicked you gotta be to be, to really be called the wicked? But to deal with that point, nothing good can come from this, and exactly why is devil need to be taken out. Ecclesiastes 12:10 says, "Never trust thine enemy, for like his iron rusts, so is his wickedness." So, and we've been given this knowledge and understanding for a reason. That says we're here, never trust thine enemy. So he's not to be trusted in any case. As Psalm 55:21, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were soft and oil, yet with a drawn sword. So he's a smooth talker. He has a silver tongue, per se. So, obviously he has deeper intentions behind the things that he says. And just as you have these photos where, a person will be shaking the person's hand, and they would have a hand behind their back holding a knife. This devil cannot wait to backstab you. We'll look through it. History should tell you not to trust this devil, man. But they're going to woo and people, with these miracles they're going to be performing left and side through this technology. People that are paralyzed, be able to walk, people that are blind, be able to see. And these are the promises that they are making. And people not wanting to take these high-risk surgeries with low chance of it working out. And them seeing these, surgeries and, things this devil's doing with the charagma, with the Neuralink. People don't want to hop on board with dealing with that. Jake seeing, that you're really listening to your music within your brain, holograms in front of you, surf the web and all these types of things. Jake is only going to see the so-called benefits in it. Matter of fact, originally when Elon Musk was in the talks of creating the Neuralink, he pretty much made that point to where you be able to listen to music within your brain, and Jake was all over that. Jake was so excited. So don't be surprised when you have people lining up to take this thing, man, and that's gonna be a sight to see. Because we told you so. But let's see what these other translations say. His words are as smooth as butter, but in his heart is war. His words are as soothing as lotion, but underneath are daggers, so not to be trusted. Revelation 3:10, because I was kept the word of my patience, I also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. So we're going to be tried, and we're going to be tested. But you also in Revelation 2:10, how Lord is going to give us the strength of spirit that we need in order to endure these coming times, to deny this Kuragam, this MOTB. This is Revelation 14:9-10. And I got 2 more scriptures, so definitely a longer type of lesson, but just flowing through the spirit. And Lord's will, tying points together, and it's edifying. But it's 14:9-10, it says, and the third angel of all them sang with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image. How do you do that? By the way of receiving that Kuragma, that MOTB, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, as I made that point earlier. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of all angels and in the presence of the Lamb. But especially on that other point in Revelation 3:10, how we're going to be persecuted or be hated or be demonized for not bowing down to the beast system. 2:10 was actually what I was wanting to get. And it says, fear none of the things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast you into prison, that ye may be tried. So for those that don't want to bow down to this beast system, that don't want to make Esau Edom your God, we're going to be hated, we're going to be despised. This devil wants to take us out. But it says, shall cast you into prison, that ye may be tried. And shall have tribulation 10 days, be thou faithful in death, and I'll give thee a crown of life. So like it says, the devil wants total control. And those that don't want to bow down to this devil, to this beast system, they're going to be outcasted. Thrown to these prisons, jails, FEMA camps. You get the gist. That's why you're going to have a lot of the Israelites end up bucking that pressure and giving in. Turning to this devil, turning to Esau, Edom. And it says, should be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of angels in the presence of the Lamb. And that's the consequence for those that do. Sorry, I speak too fast. For those that do want to receive and take that MOTB. Micah 2:10, it says, arising, depart for this, not your rest, because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sword destruction. And this is exactly why this place needs to be destroyed and why the Lord needs to get us out of here. Look at everything this devil is doing, especially if he continues to rule. As that woman listed, dealing with the future plans this devil has, by 2030, he wants no crime, he wants no this, nothing, total control, and, but the Lord's not going to let that happen. You're not going to fulfill your plans as you are wanting, because the Lord's going to stop you and cut you right down. The Lord says, strike you down right filling your belly. In Matthew 24:22, further on to that point, except the days should be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved, but for elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So, we'd be completely through if the Lord didn't, hasten these days. And it says, there shall no flesh be saved, but for elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So, and the Lord is hastening the days for his elect. And if not, we would have been completely through what the Lord's will were of with that hopeful elect. But it's dealing with that point. If the Lord didn't do these things, we'd be finished, man. Look at how the devil's running this place, and look at the things, his plans, and that he's want to implement, push out. Dealing with that total control, and how he's going to go by the way of that. But that's the point right there. This has to be a quick hit, but definitely trying to be a longer type of lesson. And Lord's will, I tied it together. And it was edifying Lord's will. I do close out. Give all praise, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, Ba'Shem El Shai, Ba'Shem Dash, and Shalom. See you next one, Lord's will.